Everybody ready? You ready, Sarah?
What traffic?
Not this time. You ready, Sarah?
Record icon.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. We are now going to call to order the regular board meeting of the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District Board of Directors on Monday, July 17th, 2023. And the time is 6:06. Could we please have a roll call?
Director Oglesby? Here. Director Paul?
Here.
Director Eisenhart?
Here.
Director Riley?
Here.
Director Edwards?
Here.
Vice Chair Anderson?
Here.
Chair Adams?
Here. Thank you very much. And now let's have our Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please stand and join me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Are there any additions and corrections to the agenda today? Thank you very much. Are there any, this is an opportunity now for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on information items or anything that is not on today's agenda, please come forward now and make your comments. I see we have Mr. Raleigh coming to the mic.
Good evening. Not addressing something that's on this agenda, it's a closed session agenda. Oops, thank you. Again, Tom Raleigh, Vice President of Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association. Anyway, there's a real chance for some leadership to wrap up the water service charge and sunset it as is mandated by your own ordinances. You got the parcel tax was put back on, the per diem was put back on our water bills, and you were obligated to sunset it. That was negotiated before most of you people were on the board. You were around, the mayor was around, and you were around, but you were not on the board. But this was negotiated back in 2012, and I think it's about 2014, you guys got the per diem charge restored, and you're obligated to sunset. And it's ridiculous that we had to go to court to get you to sunset it. It's time for the directors to take charge and tell your staff they're supposed to follow their own ordinance. It's ridiculous. You're not following your fiduciary duties as directors, carrying out your own ordinance. Why? I can't figure it out. You have an efficient staff, but they should follow their own ordinances. When they don't, you're supposed to correct them. We were looking for some leadership. We have not seen the leadership from the elected officials, starting right with the chair. Very disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else wishing to make comments today under the oral communication segment of our meeting?
Chair Adams, I do see Melody Chrislock with her hand raised.
Excellent. Ms. Chrislock, could you please make your comments?
Melody Chrislock. I attended the Salinas Chamber of Commerce meeting that CalAm held today in Salinas on Zoom. And I was wondering what in the world Salinas was doing there to begin with. They have, so they're there talking about the desal and explaining to Salinas the whole way our water system works here on the peninsula. Very puzzling stuff. I mean, but something that was very unnerving is someone who was there in person was talking to people that were in the audience. And one of the people thought that Cal-Am was a new water provider in the area. I thought, wow, this is really getting a bit strange. There were so many omissions in that presentation. They were asked how much the desal water would be per acre foot. No answer. Oh, no, there was an answer. It was, they said, oh, it'll be, they kind of dodged it and said, well, groundwater is a few hundred acre feet, you know, a few $100s an acre foot, but this will be more like Monterey 1. No, twice that maybe. And they were just like, they started out by saying, well, the peninsula, you know, there's 1,000 acre feet short. They didn't get to mentioning that that problem was already being solved for quite a while. And then it was just very odd for the, why were they in Salinas to begin with, telling everyone about the Monterey Peninsula water supply projects and the desal. And then at one point they said, well, there'll be plenty of water for CSIP from the desal. And it's like, really? Let's hope not. After Castroville takes 700 acre feet and we pay for it, now they're planning on lots of water for CSIP. They didn't go so far as to say that they were actually planning to sell water to Cal Water for development, but some people seem to suspect that's what they're up to. Anyway, I wish that the Water Management District would maybe have a conversation with Cal Water and find out what they think Cal-Am is promising them. I'm sure they have not admitted to Cal Water the kind of price they would be paying wholesale for this water if that is in fact what they're up to. It was just a little unnerving. The presentation was confusing, and you know, I have no idea what people who knew nothing about it made of it. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crislock. Is there anyone else's hands raised to make comment on this time for public comment?
I believe I see Michael Bear. Let me get there.
Mr. Bear, you're up. Michael, can you hear us?
I need to unmute him, I believe.
Michael, can you hear us?
I think you want to get the unmute button. Can you hear me? I can hear you.
Yes, we can now. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you. I just spent the weekend in your lovely peninsula, and now I'm back in San Jose where it's 93 degrees in my backyard in the shade. So what a blessing, you know, to have that cool weather. And I drove home this afternoon and going by Del Monte and Sloat at Navy Postgraduate School, there was a water leak. Cal-Am, they had a couple of it. I didn't see any Cal-Am people. Just down the street, PG&E was doing major work on Del Monte as rush hour was beginning, getting, you know, down to one lane. I fortunately got past that before it got backed up. I'm sure traffic was bad today. But getting back to Del Monte and Sloat, Navy Postgraduate School, that's got to be a major infrastructure intersection right there at the corner. And I just want to remind you, you're dealing with 100-year-old system, and you got no maintenance records whatsoever. So you don't know what you're going to be attempting to buy in the future. And just to raise the issue that it may take longer to get there to the end. I know you don't want to do, you know, be spending the rest of your life doing this to get to discovery at part 2 of the trial, but it might be a good investment of time to know what kind of, you know, system you're buying. It's obviously way down the road, but I encourage you all to think about that aspect. And in other water news, there was a rain delay in the top of the 8th inning in Cincinnati. It's 2-2. Giants have runners on 2nd and 3rd with 1 out, and they brought out the tarps. So the rain, I'm hoping, is going to last in Cincinnati until I can hear Dave Laredo's report and then go watch the end of the game. If I'm really lucky. But anyway, thanks again for all your work. And looking forward to hearing as much information as possible about lawsuits and acquisitions, etc. All right. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Michael, and stay cool.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other hands raised?
Chair Adams, I see Susan Schiavone.
Ms. Schiavone, if you would like to make sure you're unmuted and you may make your remarks.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention two things this evening. First, there was Mr. Raleigh encouraged the district to sunset the water supply fee, and I'm not sure if the CPUC has to do a decision in order for that to really happen, because I do believe the fee, the water supply fee, the one that's collected on the bill, the water charge, water supply fee, I think that's what you call it. Anyway, I believe that's designated for certain areas that have to do with conservation and mitigation. And so therefore, because that was legally done in that way, that puts some constraints on the water supply fee being used for water supply. So I know you're in a case, I don't know if you can comment it or not, but I think that unless that happens, then the water supply fee will have to still go on. The other thing was that today's CalAm presentation was definitely dissembling. We had a lot of vague information and really would not answer questions. I think some of you were there. I especially didn't like the answer on one side. Mr. Stratton was saying how much the peninsula conserves water, and they conserve it highly. But then when I asked a question about lower middle class ratepayers and the desal coming in and subsidizing even lower ratepayers, how they were going to address that, his answer pretty much was just use less water. If you're not in an apartment, you're going to not have a big bill. But if you happen to be a homeowner and lower middle class, you just have to use less water. And that was, I didn't care for his attitude about that. And then also he didn't really have any answers on questions that were of any substance at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Any other hands?
Chair Adams, I see no other raised hands.
Great, thank you very much, and no one else in the chambers, so we will close public or oral communications and move forward. And we will move forward with our first item today, and that is the consent calendar. We have one item on the consent calendar, and that is to consider adoption of the minutes of the regular board meeting on June 20th, 2023. Is there any question or comment on this item on the consent calendar from any board members? Any member of the public who wishes to comment on this one particular item in our consent calendar? Seeing none present, is there anyone whose hand is raised?
Chair Adams, I see no raised hands.
Seeing none, I take a motion to approve the consent calendar, please.
I approve.
Thank you.
I move to approve. I move to approve.
And
Second that.
thank you very much. So we have a motion and a second. Could we have a roll call, please? Oh, I don't. Okay, great. Oh, very good. Thank you. Please, all who in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Here, any abstentions? Hearing none, we will close the consent calendar. We've passed that, and we'll move on now to our general manager's report. We have a presentation by our general manager,
Thank you,
David
Madam Chair.
J. Stoltz.
Get it up on the screen. Go.
And who's going to be driving?
There's a question about to be answered. Is this on? Is that the top one? Yeah,
There is a little drive
yeah.
to go to the USB port.
On the left.
Oh, and yeah, you need this on your laptop. Actually, Sarah,
It will only talk to the laptop.
yeah, it's talking to the drive that's not in the computer. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Yep.
Well, the title of this report is the status report on Callan's compliance with the State Water Resources Control Board's orders and the Seaside Basin decision as of July 1, 2023.
Go ahead, Sarah, next slide. Yeah, let's just go ahead and advance it. Madam Chair, what's the universal symbol?
So let's see, we've got a couple of jokes we could tell here. Do any good water jokes? I don't know.
Well, this was the shortest agenda of the year, and I thought, shape.
Apologies.
There we go. Perfect. Okay. So this is the two resource areas, the river and the groundwater. Compared actual to target, we're still completely out of line with our quarterly water budgets because of the winter that we had, which wasn't originally anticipated. So this reflects 9 months year to date, the water year. But the previous 3 months, we anticipated very little Table 13 water rights, very little injection to ASR, and we subsequently had them. So the numbers don't line up very well. But I can tell you the Carmel River Basin at 1411 is about 500 acre feet in June. So we're now starting to see production from the normal water rights, because when it's raining, you get Table 13 water rights. You prioritize injection to ASR, but now we're starting to see the actual Carmel River water right kick into place. Next slide. Looking at the non-river, non-seaside groundwater, ASR recovery, you can see 206. We at the district expected probably about 600 acre feet. It may end up being more like 900 of stored water taken out of the basin. And then pure water Monterey recovery, there was no recovery in the previous 2 months because we hit our 3,500 delivery total for the fiscal year. And then we had May and June, which were within the fiscal year that we didn't need to deliver company water. So we put all that water into the reserve, but now in the water year, we've got 3 more months of a water year, which is in a different fiscal year. So things don't always line up, but you'll begin to see pure water Monterey recovery go back up for the remainder. And then you'll probably see an actual that's very close to 3,500 for the water year, as well as the fiscal year. And then just a note, Sand City D-Cell showed some productivity at almost full capacity for the month. Next slide. This is the production for customer service, or water to serve demand. The middle column, PWM recovery, that's where you can see the 2 zeros. So no water was derived from pure water. There was water injected, but it just went into the reserves for those months. The Seaside Basin, you can see, already exceeds the limit of 1474 for the year. So the company will find themselves in a position where they will have exceeded the mandatory step down of 1,474, which they can address through the already permitted replenishment assessments that the Monterey Pipeline allows them to do, or there may be some carryover credit that's available from the alternate producers in the prior year. But it's, the Seaside Basin is hitting a point where it's starting to tap beyond its permitted amount. And then finally, the total number, we're at 289 acre feet better than last year. And last month we were 247 acre feet better than last year. And the month prior, we were just about 81, I believe, acre feet. So we're, with 3 more months to go, we're actually still seeing demand in the systems lower than last year, which was lower than the prior year. And so even coming back with a heat wave in July and August, I don't foresee that we're going to have significantly higher demand than in prior years. So this attenuation, this flat 8-year period where customer demand seems to have leveled out, continues to hold, which is, we'll obviously report back at the end of the water year. The next slide is pretty much redundant from last month. We did actually have some rain in June. Next slide, please, Sarah. Which you can see that little tiny blue bar in early June, less than a quarter inch. So the total, the red line didn't really change radically in June. Next slide. And you can see the dotted line is our current year. We will continue to end up in extremely wet, but not, I think last month I reported it was the 6th wettest year on record. And obviously the blue line at the top was the wettest year, 1998. And then finally, stream flow. Next slide. You can see that in June, the blue bar is the actual exceeded the long-term average. And that's because the watershed is still releasing some of the heavy winter rains, which is a positive signal. The river, some of the tributaries are starting to dry up, but the river continues to flow. And that concludes the compliance report. The next item, an update on water supply projects. Water Supply Planning Committee requested that we reprise a presentation we did for them to the full board. This is a review of the ASR season performance. Next slide, Sarah. So these are the system constraints. You have a paper copy of this in your red folder as well. System constraints on ASR injection, we covered at the beginning of the year that if we had access to the Monterey pipeline working bidirectionally, then our water permits would allow us 29 acre feet per day during the injection season. We don't have access to the Monterey pipeline, and not all the wells are working perfectly anyway. So if we had the access to the Monterey pipeline, the well capacity would kind of top us out at 26 acre feet per day. But we don't have access to the Monterey pipeline. All the water that was injected came up over the hill through Tehama and Montera. And so with no constraints on the injection field, we could do 19 acre feet previously, about 18 acre feet now that Ryan Ranch and Bishop have been connected to the system and aren't standing alone. So they take a little bit of water out of the system. So best we could do is about 18 acre feet with all the injection sites. We did not have use of all the injection sites this year because ASR 3 was being used for recovery. ASR 3 is part of a couplet with ASR well number 4. So those two are plumbed together, which means neither was available for injection, creating a further limit of 13 acre feet per day with no constraints in the valley. And we'll talk a little bit about those valley constraints. And when there are constraints in the valley, like valley wells being offline or no new pump station, you will see in the data that 4 to 5 acre feet per day was what we were struggling to maintain. Next slide, please, Sarah. So what you see here, the individual bars are actual performance. That's how much water was injected. The orange line is how much could have been injected if, with ASR 3 and 4 being unavailable. And then the green line is what could have been injected if ASR wells 3 and 4 were available. So what you need to focus in on is the white space, the gap between what was actually injected and what could have been injected with either the orange or the green line. Next slide, please. Oh my. Well, we'll just take a look at the paper version. And so in early December, we didn't get to full capacity because of what I would call startup hiccups. Everybody said they were ready, but when the day came, they needed a day to get all the valves and the valving working. And then you start up a little bit slowly. Same thing happened. We ran out of our window of meeting our in-stream flow requirements, which is why it dropped back down to 0 for several weeks. And then when the rains really started to hit late December, basically New Year's Eve or the day before New Year's Eve, that's when we were beginning the injection season in earnest, continuously all the way through the end of May. And so that little white gap are also some startup hiccups of just getting up to full injection. Then you can see a period of time. You can almost make out the word flooding up on the screen, but a number of the Carmel Valley production wells were offline due to flooding. You know, the Paso Hondo neighborhood got hit. A bunch of wells in that region were out of service. And because we didn't have, or Cal-Am didn't have the new pump stations working by that point in time, they couldn't compensate by pushing more water up the hill into the valley. So we had to back off our injection rate in order to serve the needs of the customers and to keep tank levels at safety levels for fire flow. Then the next white area is the Pierce well was out, but the AT&T golf tournament was coming to town. And so there was the expectation of increased customer demand due to the tournament, a lack of really the largest well in the valley for production, the Pierce well. And so we agreed to back off injection to assure, again, tank levels and customer service. Then we had a pretty good period where you see the bars actually make it to the orange line and some days exceeded it. But then there was this drop off again, and that was a period of time. Pierce was still out, the Schulte well was out, and there were some leaks. So the two new pump stations were tested. Cal-Am is in effect reversing its system through Pacific Grove, Pebble Beach, and the lower valley. By reversing the flow, a lot of leaks were either caused or discovered. And so, and the worst time to kind of diagnose leaks is when it's raining too, because it's hard to tell, you know. So it took a while to deal with the system problems that probably resulted as directly from the testing of the two new pump stations. So the pump stations got energized, or the one that needed to get energized. PG&E came out on an emergency basis. So in February, they were tested, but a little too late to deal with the flooding that happened in January. So, you know, a mistiming. And then finally, the last little gap of white, the Berwick well, number 8, went out, and Pierce was still out, and Schulte was still out. So what it underscores is the lack of redundancy, both in terms of production wells here in the Seaside Basin side of things, so that they had to rely on ASR 3 for producing pure water Monterey water, and the lack of redundancy in the valley, where you could have avoided some of these cutbacks by pushing water up with the pump stations that weren't ready to go, or having more production capacity, which they don't currently have. The Schulte well is being rehabbed. There's another well being rehabbed, I think, at Rancho San Carlos. There's a new Rancho Cañada well, which would be an additional redundant well that's not yet built. So a lot of these problems that we experienced this year should likely go away. If we can get extraction wells 1 and 2 at the school easement and Seaside done in a timely manner for the Pure Water Monterey expansion, then less reliance on ASR well number 3, and it should be available during the next rainy season. So the next slide, please, Sarah. So what you have, this actual versus optimized results, we calculated what it cost us. And there's kind of two pieces to every one, not having ASR 3 and 4 available for injection, or not having a Carmel Valley appurtenant or feature available. So the flooding of the upper Carmel Valley wells probably cost us about 167 acre feet. Pierce out, the concern over demand during the AT&T Golf Week, and Schulte out, another 118 acre feet. The leaks and maintaining tank levels with Pierce and Schulte out, about 264 acre feet, significant period. And the Berwick number 8 issues, just under 100 acre feet. And then other, which is just those startup issues and so forth. So grand total, just under 1,200 acre feet kind of left on the table, if you will. And it's just for a variety of different operational reasons. Next slide. Wow. Just some very odd change in format. So even with the various Carmel Valley constraints, we did have a number of days where you could see on the chart that we actually met the orange line, meaning we maxed out. So there were no problems in the Carmel Valley. The problem was only ASR 3 and 4. So had we had ASR 3 and 4 over the first 17-day period, then a 49-day period, those 66 days would have gotten us another 330 acre feet. So the problem really is split between injection capacity here on the north side of the divide and production capacity in the Carmel Valley side, and both of which, kind of resulted in a problem. Let's take potluck on how the next slide looks. Oh, good. So the actual injected was 1,656 acre feet. Without the injection constraints, we could have been at 1986 acre feet. Without the Carmel Valley constraints, but with the injection constraints, we could have been just over 2,000. And with neither constraint, we could have been about 2,808, or 2,808. So we did leave water in the river that we really would have loved to have had. In the earlier report, I mentioned 206 acre feet of withdrawal from the ASR bank already this water year. So it would have been nice to have that additional 1,100. I think moving forward, what this really underscores for us is, next slide, is, go ahead and click. Yeah, I don't know what, well, what could we have done? The startup hiccups, these are really small amounts, but be ready to set the valves the day before it rains, not the day it really starts raining, the first day into your permit regime. The flooded upper valley wells, as I said earlier, more lower valley redundancy, which I do see coming, hopefully. And having those pump stations online when needed would have been helpful. The new Carmel Valley pump station was pretty much ready to go in July, but it doesn't function without water being pushed up to it from the Forest Lake Tanks pump station, which, there was a filing to the Public Utilities Commission that showed it should have been ready to go by late fall. A far better time to test them, when there's no rain on the ground, there's no ASR season. That would have been fortuitous. And then, of course, the Pierce well going out just underscores the need for other wells in the valley to make up the production. So, as I said, a number of these hopefully go away before the next injection season. Certainly, additional capacity for extraction in the northern Seaside Basin area has to happen in order to make pure water expansion work. So worst case, it's a 2-year build out. but new wells shouldn't take a full 2 years. It could be done within a year. So it'd be nice to get those prioritized by the company so that we'd have greater injection capacity by December. But I think things move slowly. We've seen in all of our filings with the PUC that some small capital projects take almost 2 rate case cycles to actually get completed, which is, it's 2 3-year cycles. So there's just kind of a slow, it's not as fast as we would like it, but we don't control it. And that concludes that. The other item in the general manager's report, I think, was pretty thoroughly covered in the staff note. I did include a statement on the strategic goals that were adopted and where we stand on them. There are a couple in there that we just haven't gotten started on. But generally speaking, I think we're making good progress. So unless you have specific questions from the packet, we'll just leave it as a written report.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I will come to the board to ask for comments or questions, but I have one for you to start with regarding the problems that we had and the lost water that we experienced. We are going to have, sounds as if we're going to have another really wet season this year. So what can we do to help ensure that these things don't happen? What can we do to make sure that everything is in order so we don't lose so much water to the Great Blue Sea?
Well, it's a great partnership, and I should add that, to the boots on the ground, CalAm's staff did great, our staff did great, the coordination was great. There were a lot of weekend calls. Hey, can you back it off? We've got a tank level problem. Good communication on almost a daily basis as to what was injected the prior day and so forth. So it comes down to trying to ensure that there's sufficient well capacity in the valley, and the 2 rehabilitation projects should come online. They're much slower than what we expected, but we're told that Schulte's coming within a couple of months. The new Rancho Cañada additional well, which would be a redundant well, I'd like to see the company prioritize some of these projects and just get them done. We can't really control that. Pump stations are online, they work, so that won't happen again. And then, the best case over here would be to get the first two of 4 wells for Pure Water Monterey expansion get going and hopefully get those up, and that will free up some of the load from ASR 3 and 4. So, but these are all construction schedules and project management that is on CalAm's side of the equation, not ours. So
I guess the follow-up question would be, so how can we nudge them? I'm sure I know that.
Well, I see Chris is on right now and Josh is on right now, so
Good.
consider the nudging started.
Okay, excellent. Good. Let me see if we have any questions or comments from our board.
Just one
Yes.
comment.
Mhm.
The Water Supply Committee asks that you present this in a board meeting also, because it's important that the public understand that although the 15 or 1,600 acre feet was recovered during during the last ASR season, that it could have been quite a bit better. And I thank you for explaining all the constraints and the reasons why, and I think it's important that the public understand that had the redundancy been built sooner, the necessary redundancy, and those projects moved that are really needed, moved more quickly, and had other things been done, it could have been much better. I just think in the presentation CalAm did today for the Salinas Chamber of Commerce, what was accomplished was just presented as a great feat, and that CalAm was ready, but in reality, in some respects, it was not. And so I thank you for doing that so the public knows that.
Thank you. Mr. Riley.
Yes, picking up on what our chair mentioned about El Nino is coming, so more water is expected. So I'm just trying to look at these dips, the chart that has the gap, the white space between the blue production numbers. So the startup hiccups probably can be eliminated. That's only a small area. You don't expect the same level of water, so I don't think you expect flooding. So you don't expect that to be an interference. What about these pumping stations that were out during the period here? Are they all kind of functioning now?
They are. Those are the two that, in order to kind of shift the whole system from a south to north system, Carmel River pushing water up to the north, to accommodate Pure Water Monterey, and if there ever is a desal plant from the north, you need to move water from the north to the south. So you bring it out through the Monterey pipeline, which gets it to the Erdley pump station, or that circle where in Pacific Grove where Erdley comes in. And then from there, there's a pipeline that takes it to Forest Lake inside Pebble Beach. There's a brand new pump station right near the Forest Lake tanks that then pushes that water up the hill through the forest at Pebble and then through Carmel, and then up where you make the turn for Rancho San Carlos Road, which if you were headed to Quail or the big dog walking park there that people use it for, or if you're going to the preserve. So right there is another pump station, brand new, that was kind of ready to go in the middle of summer, but its partner down at Forest Lake wasn't ready to go. And, I'll tell you, getting PG&E to do anything has been a challenge. We had trouble getting them to come out and energize the ASR project, however many years ago that was, for the middle school part. So in some respects, having the flooding allowed Cal-Am to say, hey, this is an emergency. And they came and they powered up. So in some respects, I'm not sure we would have gotten the Forest Lake pump station powered up if there hadn't been some flooding of the wells further up the hill. So, but those are now available. Some of the leaks that were discovered, I would imagine there will still be more when you reverse the flow again. So, the company's going to have to deal with some of that. I think we've seen more reported leakage in the Carmel area here in the last couple of months than we've seen in a couple of years. So I think that there definitely was an impact there.
Just as a follow-up, I can see our goal being, I'm getting on the same chart about is meeting the orange line, which is without full capacity, but fill in the gaps where we do have the capacity.
Yeah,
And even with less rain, we may end up with more water.
absolutely.
Right, okay.
Yeah, the goal is to meet the orange line. You got to fix all the mistakes that were made in the Carmel Valley. To meet the green line, we need a couple more extraction wells here in the Seaside Basin.
And I did ask a question, but I don't remember the answer, partly because I wasn't happy with it. But I asked Cal-Am about the schedule on the extraction well, their side of the extraction wells. And the last I heard was, well, working on it or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that what you would say too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, one of their engineering staff, Tim O'Halloran, gave a little more positive vibe on the extraction wells than previously. So they are in conversation with the school district. I think there was some question about, are you sure there's no alternative sites? Which there really aren't compared to the location. So where the first two extraction wells for expansion are kind of on the border of the middle school and Bayonet and Black Horse. So kind of behind the sports fields, relatively innocuous location. But, the superintendent wants to make sure that you can't go put them somewhere else. I think that has been answered at this point, but I know they're having discussions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. General Manager, Measure J. We put out a timeline earlier. I think that timeline possibly needs to be updated. When can we get that to the public so they know what's going on with Measure J? I know you're working on it. I just want to keep the public informed of
Yep.
what's going on.
Yeah, so you may have seen a schedule for review and a special meeting and so forth. There's a document that's going to General Counsel. He and Fran will work on it, massage it. Then it'll go to our special counsel. They'll have about 2 to 3 weeks. So we're looking at your decision, but we're looking at a special meeting in the first week of September for you to decide if you want to schedule a hearing of public necessity, a hearing of necessity, and B, when that would be. Right now, I think we're kind of targeting the regularly scheduled September board meeting. Make it a very limited agenda and then open to public hearing. But it has to get noticed differently than other meetings. The company would have a right to appear and address certain questions. And so all of that will be discussed with you, less so. But I guess at the August board meeting, I can bring back a schedule that we can throw up on the screen and let the public see.
I appreciate that, and I think the public will, so they can set their calendars and be there. That's an important meeting. So thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you very much. Let's take it out to the public and see if there's any member of the public who wishes to comment on anything in the general manager's report.
Chair Adams, I see Michael Bear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bear.
Hi, thank you for that excellent report, Dave. That was really very clear presentation of the challenges and, the coordination that has to happen between the company and the district, just that you're on the calls with the company instead of just dealing with it in-house, as we all hope might happen one day. I just had to say, I'm wondering if that's what I saw today, leaving town, right? The reversal, the moving of north to south, creating a major leak down by the Navy Postgraduate School, where they used to say they had problems in the past, a gravity thing. That's why they needed to have a pump, and that was part of the reason for the pipeline in the first place. But, the pipeline did not go down Del Monte as originally scheduled and went down Fremont. This is older structure, but now because you're reversing the flow from south back to north and sending the water backwards, maybe, this is related to that, because 500 feet down the road, there was a big PG&E truck, working on the wires. So it just seemed like I wanted to mention that, and thank you for the opportunity to mention that. And it ties into my earlier comment about what's going on with the infrastructure. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Bear. Are there any other hands raised? Thank you, and no one in the chambers wishing
Madam
to make
Chair,
comment? Yes.
So I'm just reminded with Michael speaking, there is one change to the minutes
Oh,
that Sarah is on top of and she's got, but in the very first oral communications, Michael Bear was spelled like a bear, not correctly for his
see.
name. And then Marley Melton pointed that one out, and she also pointed out some wording choices in the agenda item 4-1 or the exhibit 4-A. But those wording changes can't be made because these are the goals as you've adopted them. So, but yeah, I was reminded.
Thank you for making those comments. I have a couple of people who wish to make comments again, back to the board. So we'll go first to Ian, then to.
Oh, and she just, I think, and just as an example, I said something like about luring qualified employees, and she suggested recruiting. Just
not going to be negative.
No, so no, it would have improved it had we seen her comments back in March. But
Anything else, Mr. Oglesby?
No, I do want to say I appreciate the general manager with the explanation of the challenges that we face now, that for the public to, that they want to come. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank the Water Supply Committee for voting to bring this to the full
Yeah,
board's
agreed.
attention. It was nicely done, the presentation, and it raises, I think, awareness to the whole board and the public on what we need to solve before the next rainy season.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Anderson, any comments? Yes. Ms.
Yes, I have
Paul.
one also that bears both on the goals, the report, on status report on the goals and objectives, and on the presentation you just made about the ASR optimization or I noticed too that in our, well, first of all, I want to thank you for doing the report, the assessment of where we're at with the goals and objectives. As a board member, I find that very, very helpful to be reminded of all the goals and objectives and our priorities, to have a point to know where things are at, more or less. I just
What
find
we were thinking.
yes, what we were thinking, and it, yes, it reminds us of why we chose these priorities, and to know how we're doing. It's really, really helpful. So thank you for this update on how we're doing. I noticed one thing that relates to the optimization of our facilities issue that, was a big issue in the ASR report you just gave us, which is, so our goal number 5 is about near-term water supply. Continue our planning for near-term water supply, including operation optimization. And under that goal, the first objective includes to ensure optimization of existing supplies and facilities. That's what we'd like to be able to do, but as you explained so well, that's not really possible. I mean, what we should have said is to the extent possible with CalAm ownership. Because we don't own all of the facilities, the essential facilities. We can't build them out as quickly as we like. We don't maintain them. We don't test them. We don't prioritize which resources. So we would like to see existing supplies and facilities optimized, but in the current situation with CalAm ownership, that's not really possible.
Well said.
And keep in mind that the near-term problem is until the expansion comes online, the firm resources that we have are about 1,300 acre feet short of the demand. So you're going to be relying on ASR, either stored ASR water or in that year, water that you can save during the winter and get in the summer. But when we headed into this winter after 2 years of drought, we only had stored about 1,300 acre feet. If your shortfall is 1,300, you didn't have a lot in the bank. So now we've got about 3,000 in the bank, or a little under 3,000 minus the 200 that was taken last month. So we can get through the construction period. But a lot of this emphasis on prioritizing near term was you've got to have as much table 13 as you can get when it rains. Make hay when the sun shines, make table 13 when it rains. You've got to, let's move that new source well for the Sand City desal plant as far forward as possible. And if it's being held up by Division of Drinking Water permitting issues, somebody's got to reach through that and get it addressed so that you can get as much water from Sand City desal. These are the near-term requirements to just cover that shortfall every year. And so, as I've more than once said, praying for rain is not a strategy, but it worked out pretty well for us this year. But as John Lear likes to say, what you really need to make ASR work, and the reason it worked so well here was, it's like a decent rainstorm every 10 days. And so you've saturated the watershed, you've filled and spilled at the dam, and it just keeps coming. You meet your in-stream flow requirements on a daily basis. And so that's what happened here from December 30th to May 31st was just a continuous procession of available flow in the river. So then you have to change your focus on how to make sure I can get that flow, because you had the permit conditions met on a just perfectly on a daily basis. So may not always get that.
Thank you for that expansion. That was very well done. Okay, so we've gone to public comment. Yes, Mr. Riley. Oh, I'm sorry, I kind of skipped over the last two folks down there, didn't I?
One question on the evaluation comments on goal number 1 is the pure water expansion. Can you just remind us of the schedule that you can kind of anticipate about lifting the CDO and the moratorium?
Yeah, so the plan was to award, there were 2 contract packages, bid packages, one for the plant improvements out at the regional treatment plant and one for the injection well facilities. There's some question now whether Monterey One Water may throw out all the injection well facility bids. They threw it out?
That's coming up on July 20th. They're gonna throw them out.
Yeah, right, it's in the agenda.
It's on the agenda for July.
Which could be a little hiccup, but it's a 24-month build. So the idea was award July 31st, mobilize maybe by late August, and then 24 months later, you're flipping the switch, give or take delays in construction and supply chain issues. So if they do the rebid, we may lose a couple of months.
And then even if it's online and producing water, whenever they cut the ribbon for that, I think you said there's some delay procedure at the State Water Board.
Well, yes and no. Our intent is to start that discussion with Cal-Am and be ready to go to the State Water Board mid-construction.
Okay.
So a year out.
Okay.
Simultaneously, as I was telling Marlena earlier, is to get our allocation process going so that the jurisdictions know how much water they'll be working with. That'll be probably 10 months from now-ish. We're just wrapping up a memorandum on the proper CEQA approach to the allocation process. So we want to have all of that kind of queued up midway in the construction process. So then if it takes a year for the State Water Board to act, but we have to, it's going to be easier with Cal-Am on board. I know that the Business Coalition and others are very concerned about removing barriers to home building and job creation as quickly as possible. So I think we'll be looking at a coalition of people who would, as I've been trying to tell people, whether you think pure water Monterey expansion is the last water or just interim water, it's our best chance to lift the moratorium sooner because there's still so many conditions that are going to be difficult to meet for the desal project. So get on board with the expansion, promote the lifting of the CDO, file the advice letter to lift the moratorium, and take a victory. But we'll see.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I've closed public comment on this particular item and it brought it back.
This has brought up something new.
Be my guest.
Thank you. Looking ahead at getting off of the CDO, a couple things on construction, on what's planned on the residential housing need to be taken into account. I happened to catch the front of the San Francisco Chronicle at the post office today, which there was a proposal with these new requirements for the building that the state has legislated, the Regional Housing Needs Authority, for a 25-story building that's going to be opposed. But the organization that is drumming up interest against this in San Francisco is Our Neighborhood Views. Who is Our Neighborhood Views? If you haven't looked at it, you should, because it's going to affect all the housing that's on the board, that's being responses by the different cities for housing to meet the needs by the Regional Housing Needs Authority. This is rippled through all the whole state. This is generated primarily out of Southern Cal. Basically, it's a state constitutional amendment which will put local jurisdictions in charge of their housing and take it out of the San Francisco legislators in Sacramento, which we're now trying to bounce. And this is affecting all the water that's coming up that's going to be used in the next 8 years, supposedly the term of it. And so this is coming up, and you're going to hear more about it. There are a few jurisdictions in Northern Cal that supported this, but it's primarily out of the Southern Cal area right now. Our Neighborhood Views. It's a website, and you need to take a look at it. There's some very, very strong people that are leading this, elected officials and mayors in Southern California. And if I had to bet, I think that stands a good chance of passing, and our local jurisdictions would be then in control of the housing again, which I think would be a good thing. It affects everything you're talking about on future water use.
Thank you, Mr. Raleigh. Okay, I'm coming back to our item, which was to get a status report from the general manager, and he touched on 3 different subjects. We've had discussion, we've had public discussion, and we don't need to take a motion on this. We merely need to accept the report. And with that, we say thank you so much, Dave. The work you do is just amazing. So very, very pleased. Okay, and now we will go back to our district council and get an update on pending litigation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. These are 2 items. I'm going to combine them together, items 5 and 6. 6 is reportable action on closed session, and then number 5 is an update on pending litigation. Taking the closed session items, 2 items were on the agenda: conference with legal counsel concerning the LAFCO lawsuit. That's where the district is challenging the LAFCO's decision on the exercise of latent powers. And then the other item was the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association lawsuit against the Water Management District, which is now pending appeal. As to both items, there was general direction provided. There was a discussion of options and alternatives, and those options and alternatives are going to be presented to litigation counsel for discussion with opposing counsel, but there is no reportable action. At this meeting, I anticipate that there will be reportable action in the August meeting on this.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
With respect to the remaining items of pending litigation, there's a companion case of the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association against the district concerning the water supply charge. That's known as the reverse validation action. That matter has been trailing while the primary action on the implementation of the sunset clause has been litigated. There is a case management conference set before the Superior Court in this second matter for August 4th. And so we'll see at that time what the timeline is for the matter being litigated. It is very likely that the matter will be trailed while the matter is on appeal. That's, of course, subject to the discretion of the judge. Monterey Peninsula Water Management District against LAFCO. There is trial on the merits is set for August 7th before Judge Wills. That is the next step in that case. We're anticipating that a decision will be issued at that time or shortly thereafter to determine what the status of the LAFCO decision was. The district is involved in a lawsuit against the California Coastal Commission that's titled Marina versus California Coastal Commission, and that is challenging CalAM's coastal development permit. The state of California, on behalf of the Coastal Commission, did file a demur challenging one of the causes of action that were set forth in that. That demur was to have been heard on July 14th. 2 days before the hearing, the Coastal Commission dropped the demur extraordinarily frustrating because it had been fully briefed. But the Attorney General's office withdrew their demur. So in essence, the lawsuit stands as presented and will continue through the next step of the litigation process. You ask, what is that next step? We don't know. We have a case management conference set in that matter for August 22nd. And at that time, the judge will be reviewing the status of the record production. The Coastal Commission is insisting that they and only they can prepare the record, and we are next in queue, whatever that is. And we are anticipating, or they are anticipating, that the record will not be produced until the end of this calendar year. We have suggested that we can prepare the record and submit it, and we can do it in a much more expedited fashion. The Coastal Commission's position is no, only they can prepare the record. So that will be one of the topics that we are discussing before the judge: who prepares the record and when. And then once the record is actually produced, then what is the next step in the process? We don't know. So stay tuned on that. The last set of litigations that I want to report on is before the Public Utilities Commission, and that is the case challenging CalAM's 2022 general rate case. The ALJ finally has set the hearing dates in that matter. All the hearings will be conducted remotely. We have 8 days of hearings that have been set, spread over 5 different weeks. The most we have are 2 days consecutive at any one time. Often they're separated by a day in between, and sometimes they're just a day here and a day there. But those will begin September 19th, and the last of the 8 days is October 16th. And we don't yet know who will be testifying when. That is all to be resolved in the not too distant future. That concludes the report on pending litigation.
Thank you very much. I'll take it to the board for questions or comments. Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Laredo,
Yes, sir.
do the board have to discuss, I think probably an open session or closed session, on filing a complaint against the PUC on supply and demand? That case been dragging on. I believe the public deserves an answer. Can we file a complaint, have an open discussion, or do we have to have that in closed session, or can we do it anyway?
When it's on the agenda, you can have that in open session. You could do this in closed session as well. This is an issue that is before the PUC, but it's in the PUC black hole. Ostensibly, they were going to have a phase where they will be ruling on supply and demand. That is not yet on calendar, and that's
Here, can we just file a complaint? Go on record as filing a complaint if the board agree on that.
I do not believe you can file a complaint. The matter is not yet ripe to be heard in a court of law.
Okay.
We have to exhaust our administrative remedies. We have to go before the Public Utilities Commission. There are procedures that we can follow to compel the PUC to push it along.
Can we discuss those?
Yes, we can.
Okay, can we get it agendized, or do we have to do that in public or closed session? Because we need to move on that one.
Yes. I would suggest that we start in closed session, and then if you want, we can go into open session on that.
Yeah, through the chair, if possible, at our next closed session, I'd like to have that added if we can.
Added
We'll do
it
so.
to the closed session agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. Any other board member question, comments before I take it out to the public? Yes.
Just one, would that be would our next closed session meeting be a good time to report on the other CPUC case, the rulemaking about acquisition of water utilities, or not?
My sense is that it would be premature to have that discussion at that time.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. Okay, let's take it out to the public. Is there any member in the room who wishes to make comments on this item?
Chair
Okay.
Adams, I see Michael Bear.
Michael, is that a legacy hand or is this another comment?
Another comment.
Okay.
Quick though, just a question for council. Who is the presiding judge? What is the jurisdiction for the coastal commission case? And then if you guys actually bought the company out, you wouldn't have to deal with the CPUC at all related to water administration. Is that correct? Those are my two questions.
The Coastal Commission case, that is before Judge Wills. And that has, he is the judge that is assigned to that matter. With respect to the Public Utilities Commission, if the district does own the facilities, the district is not subject to the jurisdiction of the Public Utilities Commission for rates and charges or capital investment. So the PUC would no longer have any role with respect to the district's management of that system.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, see no additional hands raised. I will close this item. So we were.
Chair Adams.
Oops, sorry.
I see Marlene Melton.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I didn't see that. Yes, Ms. Melton. There we go. There she is.
Yes, I wanted to comment on the the appeal of the taxpayers case that affected the water supply charge. And I noticed the large number of dollars that support really important public benefits that can no longer be conducted without this funding. And I hope that that point can be made. And also, it appears that staff time and the important work of the staff and the jobs the staff are doing could be at some risk without this source of funding. So it's not only jobs, but good people who are doing great work for the community and producing a lot of public benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Melton. Are there any other hands raised?
Chair Adams, I see no other raised hands.
Great. Okay. Well, we have had items number 5 and 6 from Mr. Laredo, and we will accept those presentations unless there is any opposition. Seeing none, we will move forward. And the next item is oral reports on any activities from the directors, including AB 1234, reports on trips, conference attendance, and meetings. I knew it would be Mr. Riley. He's so diligent about reporting well.
I was on the Zoom meeting today with Cal-Am, interesting. That's not really my report. The Water Master had a committee meeting on the planning for addressing the overdraft in the Seaside groundwater basin. And the committee recommended that a consultant be retained to look at alternatives for source water. And if possible, get some cost estimates about what may be in the ballpark of those estimates. I've been in conversation with our general manager on some of these issues. This seems consistent with some concerns that we share, and I'm just looking forward to the results of that.
Great. Thank you for taking that up. Any other reports from directors? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I attended that meeting, Zoom meeting with Councilman Paul, Director Paul and Director Riley and a few more of our citizens out there on Salinas Valley. It was interesting, some of the things we've been talking about tonight. Cal-Am already is making up their mind that they're probably opposed, so we probably go ahead along. It was stated in that meeting. I also attended the Seaside City Council meeting, bring them update on ASR and other things we doing. And I also attended Councilman Dave Pacheco have a little committee, a little citizen meeting that I turned to and talked about Measure J a little bit on. July 20th is the Recycle Water Committee for Monterey 1. All those things that the GM been talking about, the wells and approving a contract is going to be on that one for their committed recycle committee to hear it. And, you know, they even got stuff on there, even talking about inspecting the outfall and stuff. So you might want to tune into that. And that's all I got, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. No other comments from,
Can I just add just one other thing?
sure,
Just on
of
the
course
water
you can.
master?
Yeah.
Part of the discussion was who might be the consultant. And they're interested in the consultant that serves the Salinas Valley GSA, because they will already have done some modeling and some research, and it may be a quicker review because somebody's already familiar with our area. I just
That's
say that.
interesting.
That's what they're exploring right now.
Very interesting. Thank you for that. Yes.
Yeah, just a quick comment on the Zoom meeting where the Salinas Chamber of Commerce invited CalAm to report on the water supply situation on the Monterey Peninsula. It seemed to me the presentation was targeted to a group of people that had not been following the water supply situation in Monterey, or interested, but probably didn't know very much about it. So what jumped out at me is, most of all, is the important things that CalAm did not say. Important things that they didn't say, such as how much would desalination water cost if the desal plant gets built? He mentioned, the presenter said, it's expensive, it's more expensive than any other source, but he wouldn't venture a guess as to the cost. As he mentioned that the Coastal Commission had imposed 20 conditions, about 20 conditions for the desal plant, but he didn't say anything about what's the likelihood of the company being able to meet those 20 conditions. I mean, I have a memory of many of them, and it seems to me it's very possible that it will not be possible for the company to meet all of those conditions. Several of them depend on the outcome of litigation, which is unknown and could take years. So I'll just leave it at that.
I feel like we should ask to have equal time. Okay, no other comments on this item, number 7. I'll ask the public if there's any comments they wish to make on this item.
Chair
Seeing-
Adams, I do see Melody Chrislock.
Okay,
Melody Chrislock. So yes, you know, it would be a great idea if maybe the Water Management District and Marina both made some presentations to the Salinas Chamber of Commerce to fill in all those omissions that were made. And, you know, if CalAm is still listening here, would you please stop saying that your desal is permitted? It is not permitted. You know it's not. It has to go back to the Coastal Commission after meeting the 20 conditions to get a permit. And yet you continue to say it's been permitted. This is an outright lie.
yeah, so I really appreciate your comments, but actually this is the actual item that we're talking about is oral reports on activities of the board members.
I'm good.
So very much appreciate it, but we're not going to be able to continue on there. Any other questions or comments? And so, Michael, Mr. Bear, I see your hand is still up, and I hope that you just heard my remarks. So if you have some comment to make on any of the directors' attendance at meetings, that would be accepted, but that's going to be about it.
All right. I thought we were at the end of the meeting. I didn't realize the previous comment. I was going to make a comment. I just said, still raining in Cincinnati, didn't miss a pitch. Have a nice evening.
Thank you very much.
Go, John.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Totally agree. Okay, we'll close this item then. And we see that we have our regular informational items from the staff, which everyone has the opportunity to read and review. Final comments? Yes.
I do have a comment on the informational items. I know this is silly, but I have a comment.
Okay,
And maybe this is me being old school. I am a little uncomfortable with a couple of the minutes. This is item 9, the committee reports, right? Every time we talk about a member of this board, it's Director Riley or Chair Adams. When I hear Mr. Council Laredo talking about the court, it's Judge Wills, Judge Panetta, and I really think that's appropriate. I mean, we are a governmental body, and when we refer to other members of other governmental bodies, I think a modicum, just a little bit of respect. So on pages 43 and 47 of your packet are 2 committee reports that simply refer to the Honorable Judge Carrie Panetta as Panetta. And I don't like that. She's Judge Panetta. She's earned that job. She was appointed by the governor. And so can we just have I know that maybe when we speak in shorthand, but once it gets into paper, actually, I would make a motion to amend those 2 minutes to stick on pages 43 and 47, Judge Panetta before her name. If that's inappropriate, that's fine, but certainly going into the future. Forward.
I see no reason why we couldn't entertain that as a motion.
Through the chair, I don't think we need a motion for that. I think
Okay.
that's just
General direction.
Yeah.
Okay,
Type away.
there we go.
I'll take it as a typo. I'm
Okay,
sure that's what it was.
thank you very much. I appreciate you. The
Exactly.
willingness to get it done, but in a bit of a different avenue going in.
I know that was the case. I actually don't have anything pending. I have nothing pending before the honorable.
What is happening to my meeting here? We were all doing so well, and now it seems to have declined into something beyond this. Okay, so thank you very much for all of these comments. I think at this point, I will adjourn the meeting, and the time is 7:26.